So, for those watching the video version of the podcast, it's Closer to Indigo by Maria Koropecki. I'm holding the book up here. It's a beautiful purple to violet. This podcast, The Deep Work Experience, Unlocking Your Past to Unleash Your Future. Was writing this book part of you unlocking your past, or was it more unleashing your future, or was it a completely different reason for this is a feature-length novel. It's got some heft to it. There's a story there. What was the passion to make it come out onto paper?
Well, you know what? Midlife crisis. Back in 2019, I turned 50. And that's 5 decades of living on this planet. And it takes some reflection. Like you gotta look around. Like, okay, I've made it this far. What have I been up to? What have I done? What do I still want to do? And it just so happened that my family gave me this trip to go to do a Camino, which is a spiritual pilgrimage in Spain. So that was the gift. And so I went in September of 2019 by myself to Spain with my backpack, not knowing a thing about anything, and put myself into this adventure. And I was there for 2 weeks, and I walked 263 kilometers up and down mountains in the rain, in the sunshine, figuring out my way. And it was the first time in my life where I was up to me. I couldn't rely on my father. Like, I had to make friends along the way. Like, I had to do it based on me. And that was really amazing. And so while I was on this journey, I had this, my struggle with the journey wasn't the walking. It was the finding a place to stay every night. And on my second to the last night, I was in this little town, and every night I had a different way of finding a place to stay. Like it sort of happened magically, but I was I didn't know from one day to the next where I was going to be. So I didn't do any planning. And so I was in this town, and they were all full up, and I couldn't find a place to stay, and I was really panicked. And so I just reached out, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? And I was like, just like this total surrender, and in that moment, my friends who I'd met along the way were across the street, and they called out to me, and they said, Maria, Maria. And they could see that I was upset. They're like, tranquila, tranquila, calm down, it's okay, what's wrong? And I was like, there's no place to stay, And they're like, don't worry, we'll find a place. And so we did. And we found a lovely place to stay, and then we ended up finishing our Caminos together. And it was beautiful. But when I thought about that moment where I was upset, and then people came to help me, and it all worked out, I was like, that's a book. That's the book. So when I came back home to Victoria, I started writing this book. So when I started writing, to answer your question, I could see my life's journey as I was telling that story. I could see my life's journey from a higher angle, from a bird's eye view or an angel's point of view. And I could see the narrative and how all these things that happened, they kind of happened for a reason, or they unfolded as it made sense. So I was able to see my life up until that point, and I could make peace with all of what happened. I could make peace with why someone treated me a certain way, which led me into this direction, which made me learn this about myself, which da-da-da-da-da. And then I was like, oh, and that's where, so there was that healing part of writing it. And then I could let it go. And then it could just go into the wind, and it was no longer weighing heavily on me like I was no longer dragging all that with me, and I could just, and it was like a shedding. Like, so does that answer the
Yes, yes, it does.
question? Yeah, a long way there, but yeah.
No, that was a wonderful answer as far as I'm concerned. If our viewers and listeners disagree, they can send comments on our Spotify page. There's a plug, eh? like and subscribe. No.